Welcome to Real Vermont News. Today, we're looking into who is responsible for Vermont's never-ending tax increases, like the recent doubling of the tax on home heating fuels passed this spring by the Vermont House of Representatives. Thankfully, the bill never got out of the Senate, but some of the state representatives who voted for this new tax are pictured here, and you can bet that they will be back again next year trying to get their hands into your pockets. Notice that they belong exclusively to the Democrat and Progressive parties. Many people don't realize that most of these very likable liberals we have constantly reelected have in fact spent their entire legislative careers finding new ways to take our money to pay for projects they think are more important than whatever we plan to do with that money. But their new 100% tax increase on our home heating fuels is one of their worst ideas ever. It means that the poorest among us, the very people these liberal and progressive legislators have told us they're in politics to defend, must pay a tax on a vital commodity at the same level as the wealthiest Vermonters. That's the definition of a regressive tax, a bad tax. The politicians here say they want us to pay more to stay warm in this intensely cold climate because Vermont has to do something about global warming. How ironic is that? So, they plan to use the new tax revenue to subsidize weatherization of the homes of a tiny fraction of Vermont's population, which, like everything else we do to affect the world's climate, will have absolutely no impact on it. This incredibly weak justification for yet another new tax makes it hard to avoid concluding that almost every single Democrat and progressive legislator is willing to raise our taxes for almost any reason. What's even more disheartening is that this particular tax is really a carbon tax, which many of these state representatives had promised not to impose on us. And they refuse to admit that it is a carbon tax, even though it's a tax on fossil fuels. So the whole public discussion of this new tax was clouded by some real political dishonesty. When do we start asking ourselves why we keep voting for these people? Why we keep electing a supermajority of Democrats and progressives when they keep raising our taxes, especially when the only reason for this new tax is so these people can claim they're doing something to improve the world's climate, when actually they're not. And since they won't stop signaling their virtue like this at our expense, why don't we start this summer looking for some more frugal Vermonters to run for office next year in November to replace them? And if we can't find those people, why don't we step up to the plate and run for office ourselves? It's the only way we're going to change things. You know that, and I know that. And that's all the Real Vermont News we have time for. A lot more happened, and we'll be looking into all of it.
Paid for by Rescue Vermont Political Action Committee. Bob Frenier, Treasurer.